Hello and welcome to Not One Right Way, the podcast. It's me, Melissa Manuel, she, her, back again for another fun episode with
me, Marve and Melissa, they, them, theirs pronouns.
How have you been, Marv? It's post-election here in this time.
Yeah, it's been an interesting couple of days. I think I'm feeling a little fortunate. Here in Albuquerque, it's snowing, so I'm just inside and can sort of be insulated from the outside.
Yeah.
Enjoying some hot chocolate and coffee and figuring out how to get through this day.
Valid. That sounds nice. Doesn't snow in California, so.
It does snow in California.
Okay, but like not in the city.
No.
You have to go up to Big Bear to see the snow. What are you watching?
What am I watching? Oh, I recently watched the most recent season of Demon Slayer. Very good. The Hashira training arc. So let me flip those questions back onto you, Melissa. How are you doing? What are you watching?
I am doing okay. It's November 7th, and I feel fine and normal. That's not true, but it is what it is kind of vibe.
Okay.
But otherwise, fine. Excited to be here and talk to you and our guest today. I'll introduce in a second what I'm watching. Oh man, again. I just finished Agatha All Along. That was fun. I don't know. I feel like people are torn on how they feel about the ending. I kind of liked it. I wasn't fully on board. It got a little weird, but no spoilers. I still think it was a very creative, fun show. A lot of singing. Patti LuPone, who I love. Aubrey Plaza. So I don't know. It was a good time. Well, let's introduce our guest for the day. Someone I'm very excited to talk to and get to know more. Josh Loera, a 3D artist who's currently still in school. It's very exciting to talk to someone who I met at Lightbox in the lines, like waiting for a panel, and to learn more about you and what you do and what your dreams and your goals are, because I think a lot of listeners are probably also students or wanting to get into the industry similar. So, hello, Josh.
Well, sorry. Hey, thanks for having me. But yeah, it was cool meeting you at Lightbox. That was the whole experience, wasn't it?
It was. Did you have a good time at Lightbox?
I did. It was fun. It was inspirational. It was my first time. I was a little frustrated with the whole ticket system, but that's just maybe partially my poor planning, and partially you can't do everything. Like you want to go. When you pick something, one session means you miss another session. So it's just like that was fun though.
That's good. I'm sure we'll talk about it more.
Yeah.
What was your opinion of the Pasadena Convention Center?
It was cool. The nature of like getting the tickets and then going like kind of spending in between time in the hall caused me to be running back and forth a lot. So it's like you're running outside, and it was nice and warm, so I got good and sweaty sometimes. So, but it was cool. Are you familiar with it? Are you from out there?
I'm from Southern California. I mentioned this before, but I'm here in Albuquerque. Yeah. Melissa, though.
I do live super close to the convention center, so it's like not far for me to get there. And I've been to Lightbox. This is my third year, so I'm pretty used to like the chaoticness, but it's still a lot to digest every year because there's so many people.
Yeah, it was kind of bigger than I thought it would be. But yeah, it was fun.
Nice. So we would like to get to know you. As I mentioned before, I'm a social worker, used to asking people a lot of questions, getting their deep personal histories. Day one, we want to know what your favorite hot beverage is.
Ooh, my favorite hot beverage is kind of boring. It's just a black coffee. Like I really love a black coffee, especially I lived in Guatemala for a couple years, and they have like some of the best coffee in the world. And that, if you can get some local, beans from there, or and yeah, I love a black coffee. I think it started off because I was like on a diet and stuff. So I think cutting out the sugar and the milk and everything. That's how it started. But I grew to appreciate black cup of coffee, and now I'm starting to get sensitive with like caffeine. So I'm starting to find like decaf coffees and stuff like that. So that's kind of an indication of how old I am as a beginner in this in this industry.
Yeah. I hear that. I hear that. I have had to severely cut down on my caffeine intake. 1 cup. I cannot go above 100 milligrams of caffeine.
Yeah.
Not only will I like absolutely shit my pants, like I'll just like have a headache all day.
Yeah.
Does that mean that I've never had a Celsius, which is 200 milligrams of caffeine? No. I just take it on the chin, you know? Sometimes you just shit your pants at work and have a Celsius.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Honestly,
brave.
I think my sensitivity came from drinking too much like monsters in college. And
Yeah.
so I think that's the drink of the older generation, right? You guys are younger than me, right?
Wow. I'm only 25, but yes, I do feel super old after Lightbox because everyone there was like, "Oh, I'm in college. What year are you in?" And I'm like, "Oh, sweetie, I graduated in 2021." Um, but I guess I got baby face because everyone kept thinking I was a student. It's
Still
okay.
young, 25 is young. So I
It
wish
is
I
still
wish I was
young.
25 sometimes. So
I can confirm for our viewers, I mean our listeners, that Melissa does have a baby face.
Thanks, guys. Josh, why don't you share with us a little bit about your your story? Like, how did you know you wanted to get into the animation industry?
yeah, so my background, I grew up in Northwest Indiana, which if you're not familiar with is like the most famous city in that area is Gary, Indiana. Michael Jackson's from there. There's a big steel mill out there. It was the murder capital of the world for a little while. and, and so like I grew up around there, and kind of working class. Both my parents immigrants, both ended up out there because of the steel mill. Either my mom came, she was really young, and I guess they were recruiting people from Mexico to work in the steel mill. And the town that my grandfather's from, they had a steel mill too. So it was just kind of work like, we'll help you with your papers if you come. We're sending too many people to like war right now, so we need more people to work back then. And then my dad moved at a totally different time from a totally different place. So that's kind of like the background, like working class immigrant family. So growing up, I knew I was like into the arts. I remember getting my first sketchbook from my dad when I was like 5. I remember filling that up, and eventually I remember feeling like I wanted to be like an illustrator and an author, because I love to read and I love to draw. So I thought the confluence of those would come together in that. But then I remember in middle school, they gave us like an aptitude test. It was like, take this test, and these are the professions that would be good fit for you. And then the incomes, right? And so I was also good at science and math. And so they had engineer right here. And then they had, author over here. And it was like scale wise of,
Yeah.
of income, it was not comparable. So I ended up going down the engineering path for a long time. Got a bachelor's in math, graduated civil engineering, and spent time in that industry. And so, like, I didn't realize I wanted to be in the animation industry for a long time, but getting back connected with my art after work and on the weekends while I was an engineer, slowly, and I started building that snowball, and I started rediscovering this creative side of me and like trying all these different things. And I tried from like UX design to like graphic design to illustration, eventually finding my way into like 3D art, which is what led me to wanting to be into the animation industry.
It's have in my head people that
I don't know.
engineers get those little, like, is it iron or aluminum or something when they graduate? Like a reminder that like the balance of the world, the safety and support and structure of the made world is dependent on you. And it's like, oh, that's pretty deep.
Metal.
Yeah.
It's heavy metal.
Yeah, literally. No, actually, there was a lot of things that a lot of other engineering students did that I didn't. I kind of,
Mhm.
there's so many signs that I probably should have done something else along the way. You know, one of those was that I didn't get a great GPA. I didn't like hang out with like a bunch of civil engineers. A lot of engineers I did hang out with, but civil engineering was not I didn't like it honestly. And I remember everyone at the time of graduation, they were all taking this class where you get like this fundamentals of engineering thing which is like a predecessor to like the professional engineering licensure. For some jobs you need it, for a lot of jobs you need it, but for some you don't. And my job that I was gonna lined up for when I graduated didn't require it. So I was like, y'all do all that and you know y'all want to pay for an extra ring or whatever. I didn't get a graduation ring. I didn't get my new fundamentals of engineering. Yeah, I just wanted to graduate and get a job.
Yeah.
Totally fair.
Yeah.
I felt that way too. I like even in what I was in a film major, which was what I liked. I didn't hang out with anyone in my major. It was mostly because the film major at the college I went to was very documentary, live action focused, and I felt super unsupported in like what I wanted to do, which was learn more about how to get into the actual industry, like get a job, and not freelance for the rest of my life, which is kind of what they taught everybody. And so it was hard to mesh in with everyone who was just like, yeah, I'm just gonna make documentaries about skiing. And I'm like, I don't care about that. So I was also kind of very isolated from the people within my program, even though we're supposed to be super close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's like this idea that if you're headed in the same direction, you have like the same interests, but obviously that's not true. We have a variety of factors that lead us to the path we're going, and degrees, very, very tiny part of it. Big part, but actually good tiny.
Yeah.
I can say this as a philosophy major because I don't know
You're
where
not
I was
out there
going.
philosophizing.
I'm not out there philosophizing. Some people are into that, but I was like, eh.
So Josh, what are you doing now to pivot from an engineering career to animation?
So the pivot has been actually multiple pivots. And so, I told you that I was kind of working after work and on the weekends, just kind of getting back in touch with art. And I had actually, what led to me actually doing it, at the same time, I wanted to get like a raise, at my job. I brought it up to my boss and he was like, well, if you get your PE, your professional engineering licensure, like we'll give you a raise. And I'm like, well, I don't need that for what I'm doing. At this point, I was in sales for engineering. Like, you don't think about it, but, construction companies that build all the stuff, that engineers design need to buy material and products and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, I'm selling fine. Like, I finally carved this place out after work and on the weekends for my, for that side of me. I'm not gonna spend that time relearning all the math and science skills and random crap to pass some tests so that you can pay me more, even though I'm making you more money every year. So I was just like, all right, I'm gonna get into something. I don't know when, but I'm gonna start saving up, and in the next couple of years, I'm gonna try to do this full time. And within that time, the pandemic hit, and my girlfriend got a job in Guatemala, where they kind of covered, the housing and mostly, and I had my savings, so she was like, "You want to come to Guatemala? You could figure out this art thing full time, and either learn or build your skills or try to build something else." And so that's what I did. We went to Guatemala. I spent my days trying to learn how to draw, and my goal was to like make a comic. I wanted to like start making comics and like start selling comics like on an indie level, Kickstarters and stuff like that. And I made a few comics. I made like 5 comics, and it was just like I wanted to kind of grow with my audience, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? Like the first comic would be crap, and then the fifth comic should be much better. But that in theory is cool, but in practice, it's like you have to really you have to get people on board with buying crappy comics. So it didn't really work out. So that's when I kind of decided to, try out 3D, and when I found AnimSchool. AnimSchool is kind of a competitor to the Animation Mentor from the last guest. It's exactly what I was looking for. I didn't want to go back to school, traditional school, and get more student loans. I also have an issue with like giving my money to like these historically racist structures. You know, after having done so for so long, it's a lot more like a trade school than a university. So it's like you learn your skills. If you can show that you can do those skills, you do well. It's like we're not trying to trick you with some exam or some specific wording on an essay or some bullshit. And that's kind of what I've been doing for like the last almost 2 years. I started in like April 23, and I'm finishing up this December.
Well, congrats.
Yeah,
Thanks.
that's so soon. How does that feel?
It feels good. It's a bit challenging. One of the things I discovered is that, these online classes that, if you're doing it, if you're creating your self-guided curriculum, whatever, YouTube or Skillshare and stuff, it's cool. You're going to learn a lot. But when someone sits down and critiques you every week, you're going to grow and get better at an exponential rate than if you did it on your own. So this last year and a half has been just a steady, significant growth in like how I've been able to do work. So in 2D and 3D, because I do love to draw and paint digitally and physically. I found that having that base and then going into 3D made me a better starting point at 3D than others who didn't. And then going back, and when I do practice just drawing and painting, the 3D helps me improve my 2D stuff. And so it's been really cool.
That's awesome. You're the second person we've talked to who's gone to like a trade type school for art. So AnimSchool is all online.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's very interesting. It's nice to hear that people are finding other ways to learn, as what I'm seeing, like especially people who want to shift later in life, like not straight out of high school, finding something
Yeah.
that they could still get the skills they need in like an educational setting without, like you said, having to pay thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not like it's cheap, but the value is there. And actually, one of the requirements for this school specifically is I believe you have to have a bachelor's already or something
Mhm.
before, because, and what I noticed is actually a lot of people who did go to art school or did study like 3D animation in school didn't actually get a full, like, they didn't get a whole lot of practical. It's kind of like the base, they don't get like a whole lot of portfolio stuff out of it. So they go to Anim School and they get a deeper dive in these different subjects. So I have several classmates, which one of them I met in person at Anim School, who went to art school before. In this case, some people will just take a couple classes. They'll take like 1 or 2 classes just to kind of like improve on that specific skill if they've already gone to like animation school or art school, but some people do the whole program too. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Also, just like Animation Mentor, they also have industry professionals, so you get to meet them and interact with them and kind of build a network too a little bit.
Nice.
Yeah. The networking part is, I think, a piece that maybe some people are apprehensive about when doing not a big school because it's like, oh, how am I going to make connections, especially doing it all online? But how have you been navigating the networking side of trying to get in?
Yeah, I think I've been navigating it. I probably would put myself, if it's like out of 10, I'm probably somewhere in the middle. I try to network as much as I can, but I'm also like, also an old head where I don't like messing with Discord that much. Like I'll go on there. I'll force myself to go on there and talk, and chat with people. I remember when group text started becoming a big thing, and I'm like, don't add me to a group text, just getting all these texts all day long.
Yeah.
And and so um and I'm the kind of guy where I would sit, like, if I'm going to respond to a text, I'll sit and I'm thinking, how should I word this exactly to get my message across? And if it's a group text, then you're getting like 10 texts at the same time. You're like, what was I responding to? And then your brain's like trying to factor in all the new information you're getting. And so like, I don't mess with it usually, but I went to Lightbox for the reason of networking. One of my instructors was there. His name's Charles Ellison. He's kind of a badass, so you're gonna look him up. And I was hoping to meet other students. I ended up meeting up with really only two, and one was from England, or from the UK, Britain, Great Britain. But yeah, we all fall into this similar circles. Uh, and yeah, it was like I was so surprised to see her there. But yeah, I try to be social on social networks, and I've done cold calls and cold emails to like local studios for like freelance work, which has you know allowed me to do some freelance work for little smaller studios and smaller projects, which has been pretty cool.
I wanted to ask about your freelance experience because I saw it on your LinkedIn. How did you land those? You said you cold called, and what did you learn from doing just a little bit of freelance?
Yeah, it was mostly cold calls. I'm trying to think. Another avenue was like Fiverr, not Fiverr, Upwork. I've gotten a good chunk of projects off of Upwork, and what I've learned is it's tough out there. Upwork, to be competitive, you kind of have to be pretty cheap, which at the time was fine. I've recently had to kind of get off of Upwork, just because we moved back to the States and I'm in North Carolina now, and yeah, my savings took a hit, and I need to make more money now. So what I've learned is that you kind of have to price yourself the way you have to learn how to value your work and price it the way that is going to help be sustainable. And it's sometimes some of the freelance work, it's smaller projects, like the 3D work that I've done in freelance. They're smaller projects, which means they're faster, which means you know the quality. A movie studio would look at the quality and it's not that kind of quality. It's different kinds of qualities. So you also learn, like, oh, this is going to help me pay the bills this month, but I can't really put it in my portfolio, or like put it front and center if I'm trying to get into a studio like XYZ, And I recently learned that because one of my instructors gave me a critique. Well, it was more like she had gotten reached out to by a studio who had an artist program that I applied to, right? And it's like one of those. It's almost like an internship, right? And but it's for people that with different, diverse backgrounds. It says. So not only, minority people like me, but also people like career changing and stuff like that. So it's like, to me, it was a perfect fit. And they reached out to her saying, oh, we think he might be a good fit and this and that. But we're a little confused by the quality of work that we see on his portfolio. And this is how it was worded to me. And
Wow.
she was just like, yeah, you got to take some of these projects off because if you're trying to get into studios like this, and they're not going to want to see that. And so I didn't get it, so I didn't get it, the program into the program, but that's a learning lesson too.
Yeah, that was a crazy lesson to learn.
I know, right?
Yeah. It's interesting that they reached out to this professor, this teacher that apparently they had contacts with. Do you know what their connection was between this instructor and the program?
I didn't get the full details, but my understanding is that my instructor maybe either worked with the person at the studio or had worked. She's actually full-time freelance as well, but she's like, on a different level, than me. Yeah. I'm out here trying to get scraps, and she's getting good, the good stuff, which is why she's an instructor. She's way better than me. So yeah, I think it was just a matter of she knew a person, and I had her name on my resume and on my portfolio for a class project, that ended up on my portfolio, and it was just a matter of, I think, them seeing the name, saying like, oh, I knew this person. Let me reach out. So yeah, it's weird that they reached out, and then I got a just a standard kind of rejection email,
Right.
The rejections only make us stronger.
Yeah.
That's what I tell
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah, it's okay. Like, it's definitely okay. For me, I've trained myself to be okay with rejection on the long term, especially the fact that I was in sales. That was like a big part of sales. Like, if you're not getting rejected, you're not doing your job in sales. But at the same time, selling your own, services, especially when it's art, I learned that it's much different. Like selling a piece of concrete or a bridge or a piece of steel, it's so separate from you, and it's like this other cold object that goes in over there. But your art is like, that's like right here. That's part of me. So it took me a little bit to figure out how to bring that from the sales side, selling of a product side, to the selling of my services side. And but at the same time, it's like, yeah, I'm gonna be sad for a little bit, and then I'm gonna get back to it. But so, kind of with this election, like, yeah, I'm gonna be kind of sad and mad and pissed for a little bit. But what am I gonna do? I gotta keep making art because I can't stop anyway.
So
You
true.
know?
Very good way to put it.
Yeah.
I'm curious, are you trying to get more into the 3D artist field, or would you still like to do illustration? Because I mostly work with 3D modelers in my job. Like, in all my jobs, I've only worked with 3D modelers and some concept artists. So I'm curious what your dream job is, I guess.
At this point, I think I'm better at the 3D modeling and 3D art. So that's where I'm putting most of my efforts to. If I could get hired to draw or paint, that would be dope too. But I know that the competition is rough out there, and I'm only kind of good, So yeah, 3D art is where I'm focusing on. That's where all my efforts are going.
Are you
3D modeling, 3D sculpting, modeling is really what it would be. Yeah.
are you leading on the character side of things, or would you do props, environments?
I would do props and environments. The program is called, like, it's a character program, so you do dive deeper into character stuff. But we do take props and environment classes, and I would take that for sure. And a lot of modelers will take the props and environments. That's kind of, I guess that's the process sometimes, getting in as a props or environment artist, and then moving into characters if they think you're good enough.
Yeah, I love when people make props. It's my favorite. They make a little thing, and it's always so cute. I love the prop.
Yeah.
As a little Polly Pocket accessory.
Yeah.
What do you say, Josh?
Yeah, and you're in production, so you get to see a lot of different sides of it, right?
Yeah. So I'm a production assistant right now, a PA, and I at my last job I was a PA, then a production coordinator, and it's always, you see the whole pipeline. So I get to see all the pretty concepts. So I love biz dev, look dev, whatever you want to call it. And then I move it to the modelers, like the artists, and I'm like, okay, make this thing 3D now. And then they do it and it's magical. I love to
Wow.
see the process, like going from the block out, which is like the gray modeling stage, and then going to the texture phase, seeing how something transforms is so fun. Makes me so happy.
That's so cool. Yeah, yeah. Not you learn the whole pipeline in school, like the texturing. I just finished like a texturing. They call it look dev and grooming class. So we
Mm.
learned all the texturing and like making hair and stuff. And I was like, wow, I actually like this more than I thought I would. Sometimes you get into a thing where like, oh no, like I would really love to make the sculpt and character modeling, but like playing with the textures and making it look just so, yeah, I really like it.
It's an important skill. Mine show we have someone, Valeria, who we talked to actually. She just does the look depth. She does the texture. So that's definitely needed, especially when the asks are very specific. Like when I worked on games, it was, oh, the metal needs to look very specific, or trying to get the wood to look either aged or new and shiny. Like having the ability to understand the textures is a very important skill that I think is super valuable, but not something I've noticed that people talk about a lot. It just comes up in the work.
Yeah, yeah, and it seems like to me the positions are getting more broad. I don't know if that's just me, what I'm seeing in the application in like these applications where it's like it used to be more so like look dev and or animator or modeler or environment. But now I see a lot of like 3D generalists where it's like not only do you have to sculpt and model and texture, but you have to know how to rig and animate and VFX and all this stuff. And I'm like, whoa, that's a lot of stuff. Like,
That's crazy. I think it's just an attempt to not pay people to do the
yeah,
jobs.
Yeah.
Not good.
I recently learned about the term like bones and rigging. And would you ever be somebody who just like puts the bones in?
A
I
rigger?
would do it. I would
Sure.
do it. I think so. Yeah. I had in this program, you had a choice like after the first, there's like 3 prep classes that you take, and then there's like 4 core classes that you take, and that's how you finish out the program. And the last 4, you could have gone in a more rigging direction and or a more like character modeling direction. I went the character modeling direction. In those first 3 classes, there was a rigging class, so I know how to rig. But in my freelance, it's kind of like, oh yeah, we need a rigger too. Can you do that? And I'm like, yes. And then I'll go on YouTube and figure out, how to do something more complex.
How do I put the bones in?
Yeah. Yeah. So I've done some cool stuff with rigging too. I learned how to like do facial rigging for mocap,
Mm.
for like facial mocap. I thought that was really cool. And that was kind of one of those things. He was like, hey, do you do this? I'm like, technically know how to do it. But can I do it to that extent? Let me see. And I went on Google and it kind of showed me a way to speed up the process. And I got the job, the little freelance job. If you look at my portfolio, there's a car that talks.
I
So
see
that
the
was
car. Cars are hard to make. It's a good
y-
car.
thanks. To be 100% honest, I didn't model the car, but I did rig the face to talk. So
Also very important. Making cars talk is such a unique challenge.
it is. It is. It turned out cool. It was on cable TV out here in North Carolina, so that was pretty cool.
It's fun. Something I learned recently is cars and vehicles are generally much harder to model than anything else. Because I had an artist who normally does like environments, etc., and then we gave him a vehicle prop task, and it took
Hmm.
him so much longer, and he's usually like super fast. And I was like, "Why is this taking so long?" I asked my associate producer Tony, and she was like, "Oh, it's cars just harder, and
Mm.
there's something about them more. Maybe it's like horses. They're harder to draw, harder to model."
Yeah, yeah, cars are harder. I've only done like one vehicle, but I started doing my own personal vehicle that I haven't finished, but it is hard. But I used to be like a car guy, like growing up. Part of that process was like working on cars with my dad and stuff. Like my dad's also like a technical like, artist type guy. He loves to mess around and build stuff, tinker with like engines and cars, but he also loves to like paint. And like, so we've painted a car before in the past, and
That's awesome.
we've done body work and Bondo, and the intricacies of a car is kind of crazy when you really think about it. So modeling, it comes through on the modeling side as well. It's like, oh, okay, this is not just, we take it for granted how complex a thing it is.
For sure. As we get close to wrapping up, I'm curious, what are you most proud of on your journey as you've been self-teaching and growing? What is something you consider to be like your proudest achievement?
I guess keeping on going. There's a lot of points where I could have quit, and it would have been, whether it's people in my family or other people who know me, who know the situation of like quitting a job in engineering and trying to be an artist, it would have made all of the sense in the world to them, and it would have made all the sense in the world on paper. Because at this point, it's been almost 4 years that I started this journey, and there's been a lot of points where it's like, am I built for this? Am I gonna actually make it one day, or should I quit now? Like, is this the time to quit? Because seems like it. A lot of things are saying that I should, but I haven't. I haven't yet. And even recently, I've been kind of got back into the engineering side to find a company here that would allow me to do like part-time work. And this role is an estimator, so it's not like an engineer per se, but it's a lot of engineering principles and stuff like that. I don't know if that was kind of luck, but it was kind of okay. I do have a backup. They say not to have a plan B, but I kind of had to have one because it's taken much longer than I thought, and I've needed more resources than I thought I would, whether that's time or finances. Like I said, I could quit and just go back working full time into engineering. That would be the actual easier route. But I haven't, and I'm still making art every day. And I will even if I did ever quit, I don't think I will. I would still make art on nights and weekends. So
Yeah.
kind of self-discovery in that sense.
Snaps to you for your stick-to-itiveness.
Yeah,
Thanks.
it's admirable.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. What about y'all? What are you guys most proud of?
Oh, you go first, Marv.
I recently answered this question in an interview,
Yeah.
and the achievement I'm probably most proud of is my senior thesis. I spent a lot of time working on it, and it was during a particularly hard moment in my life. This feeling that this is literally the last thing between me and my degree, and shit is going on, and I don't want to focus on this. But the question that I'm trying to answer is so important to me. I'm trying to make an argument for this thing that I know exists, that I know is felt by many people and is important and literally life-changing. Why don't I let it change my life a little bit too? Focusing on it, getting it done, presenting it for the final time, the first and final time, to my class of other philosophy students and friends and guests and my parents. Very proud, actually, like of all of that, of course, but also like that multiple people cried during and after my presentation because it was like that impactful to them. And like that's why I kept doing it, because it was important to me and I knew this is an important fact of life for many people.
That's awesome.
As someone who was there when the thesis was presented, it was very, very beautiful and I loved it. But you should tell us what the topic was, because you've really hyped it up now and I'm sure people are curious.
It's actually going to sound a lot stupider when I explain it. It's still important. The sort of framing of my work in philosophy is like critical aesthetics. So, why do we love art? What's important about it? Why do we make it? Why do we enjoy it? What is it saying about our world? So, I applied critical aesthetics to the Netflix TV show Hintified, because it was really important to me.
Yeah.
And so the argument I was making is that Hintified shows a particularly good example of like the neo-colonial aspects of gentrification and how in many ways it's the transformation, the forced transformation by colonial powers to change the internal and external realities of people. So the first is just like the buildings look different, our streets look different, people who are coming in look different, but also changing what our role in our community is. And in that way, displacing us from the places that mean something to us.
That's amazing.
Thank you. I'm so excited to talk about it. It's been a while.
That's awesome, man. Congrats.
Thank you.
I'm trying to think of my proudest moment. I think about it and it's like those moments were always shrouded with my own internal monologues of grief and I'm not good enough, blah, blah, blah. So a bit of the imposter syndrome. Even when I'm achieving something, it's kind of crazy to not fully feel it. But I think about also my senior thesis. That's something I think that really cemented in me that I wanted to work in animation because I wrote a paper on the importance of queer representation in Western animation specifically. And I think I was the only one that cried, but I cried at the end of it. And because I was so moved and I'm like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. Like work on achieving positive representation in animation, especially for young people who probably need it now more than ever to see themselves on screen in a loving and safe way. So that for me was like proud in the sense of more like personal, like finally figuring out what I want to do because I've always been clear that I wanted to work in entertainment, like film, whatever. But why I was doing it, figuring that out was like a really good, solid moment for me. Of like, this is why I'm doing it.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I was just talking to my girlfriend about, we were in this state, after the election. And when I was in Lightbox, I'd like to keep an eye out for like new characters to model, like character design. So I was walking Artist Alley and stuff like that. And I could not find like a Latino character, like someone that looks like me in a character design for whatever. Like it's all fantasy. It's all, a lot of times it's either fantasy or something like that. And so like if you go to my Instagram, I just did a space surveyor because my brother's a surveyor. And a lot of my family, they're like in like engineering technical fields, and my brother's a surveyor. And I was like, I could scour the internet, and if I search Mexican scientist or Mexican doctor character design, it's like nothing, Yeah. It'll pick up sometimes a Mexican, and you get a lot of like gangsters, or you get someone in my class is modeling like just like this super skinny guy in a sombrero and like a vest, and I'm like, hey, I wonder who searched to find that. But it kind of, to me, sometimes I wonder if part of the reason, we see the statistics of like who voted for what, like Latinos voted more for Trump, and I wonder if there's a sense of like I was always looked at it like this, show this picture of this, whatever the internet or people think a Mexican is. So why not vote for the guy that's talking all that shit, right? I never seen a cartoon about a Mexican space explorer or a Latino. Doesn't matter, like Jedi. Oscar Isaac was in space, in Star Wars and stuff. But it's like I wonder. So part of my effort, I think, of being an artist is like showing kids that we could be all the same things
So
and
we're
being
not
okay with
internalizing that racist image over and over again.
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
I say it in a convoluted, long way, but you really summed it up right there.
But no, that's important. That's why shows like Primos was so exciting and Casa Grandes and all of Jorge Gutierrez's work.
Yeah,
Always amazing. So I get that. That's also like, I feel like when you're doing activist work, you can't do everything. There's so much. Picking something that you can advocate and fight for constantly because it's not a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. For me, it's always been like, how can we represent people in a healthier way? Because, like you said, you really do internalize it.
definitely.
So true.
We should probably wrap up because I realize I have to go to work.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, you're good. We're just having a really good time. I love this conversation. Makes me feel
Yeah.
good.
I've had a blast with you guys. I really appreciate you guys having me on here. And
Of course.
I love the show. I'm a big podcast listener.
Oh,
So
yeah.
when I found out a new one, especially with people I know, I was like, oh, hell yeah. Add it to the lineup.
Man. Wow.
Can't believe it. Starstruck.
Like what's interesting is that this is probably like the second or third time one of the interviewees has actually heard our podcast that's like actually been, what's it called, posted or
On the air.
whatever on the air. And like, oh, you guys are actually interested in this. We hit our market demographic.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part. You guys are doing a good job on that side.
Thank you. We're trying. We have so many more episodes to put out. We've been working really hard on connecting with people and so that there's more for people to learn about and listen. So we're excited.
Yeah, I can't wait. I might not listen to my episode depending. Sometimes I can't hear my voice that long.
That's very fair. So for your final words, do you have any advice for fellow students, aspirating people, whatever you'd like to say?
I think getting to know yourself is a big part of like life in general. Sometimes we're taught to try to ignore certain parts of ourselves, and those parts keep kind of nudging us and trying to tell us like, yo, this is what you're supposed to be doing. You keep saying, no, maybe I should go and do this other thing because of what my parents or what society or whatever. And so I think a lot of people get to an older age. I just turned 33 on election day. And
Happy late birthday.
I
Happy
know.
birthday.
Thank you. Not a great end to the birthday, but I know older people, including people in my parents' generation and stuff like that, where you talk to them and they spent all this time and didn't have the time or the resources or the know-how to like just figure themselves out. Like you don't even know yourself when at this age. And I think that leads to a lot of like mental health issues and stuff like that. So at the very core of chasing dreams is like knowing yourself and learning more about yourself every day, I think is important.
Snaps to that.
That was so beautiful.
It really was. Wow.
Oh, thank you.
It's been so great talking to you, Josh. Thank you so much.
Yes, you have a good day. Great to meet you.
You too. Thanks a lot.
Well, that was our conversation with Josh, and that was lovely. I feel so good inside.
Right? Yeah. I think this really goes to show that there's not
one
right
way
to chase your dreams.
There's not one right way to start a comic.
There's not one right way to really get into Guatemalan coffee beans.
There's not one right way to model a car. Talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to Not One Right Way, the podcast. Please comment, like, and subscribe, and you can follow us wherever you get your podcasts.
And tell your friend to listen. Bye.
Bye.